Hello guys! Welcome to Sissygram Genderbender Stories on YouTube. Today, I am bringing you a brand new genderbender story. If you like my voice, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for regular updates. Now, let's start the story. Alex was focused and determined as he carefully made his way through the final stages of his long-awaited experiment. After months of research, he was ready to test a newly discovered PEL extract that showed promise for groundbreaking cellular changes. The anticipation was palpable as he carefully prepared. The dose, his heart racing with the excitement of the potential discoveries this experiment could lead to in the field of biology. With steady hands, he measured a small amount of the pale green liquid into a pill cap, hesitated for a brief moment, and then swallowed it, taking a quick gulp of water to wash it down. Now all that remained was to document any changes that might occur. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Alex took down his initial notes in his lab notebook, making observations about his physical state, the time, and his overall feelings. However, just minutes later, an unusual tingling sensation began spreading through his body. He quickly made a note of this new development, but his handwriting became more erratic as the tingling intensified, turning into a prickling, painful sensation like pins and needles. "Fascinating," he murmured, though his voice sounded oddly higher than usual. Then a wave of dizziness hit, and he grabbed the edge of the lab bench to steady himself. The room seemed to spin, and he squeezed his eyes shut, trying to fight off an overwhelming wave of nausea. When the dizziness finally subsided, Alex opened his eyes and gasped in shock. His lab coat, which had fit perfectly just moments ago, now hung loosely on a distinctly feminine frame. He, or rather, she, looked down in disbelief at the soft curves that had replaced his previous body. "This can't be happening," she whispered, but her high-pitched voice only confirmed the incredible reality of what had occurred. The plant extract had somehow transformed Alex's body, changing him from male to female. Heart racing, she rushed to the mirror hanging in the lab and stared at the face staring back at her. The delicate features, full lips, long eyelashes framing wide hazel eyes, and brown hair that now cascaded past her shoulders all made it clear this was a new version of herself. The reflection was undeniably feminine. Stumbling back from the mirror, she tried to process this unimaginable change. How is this even possible? She wondered, her mind reeling. And more pressing still, was this permanent or just a temporary effect? Her first instinct was to document everything. She grabbed her notebook and began frantically jotting down more observations, periodically pausing to examine her body. She noted her height had decreased by about 4 inches. Her muscle mass had diminished, her body fat redistributed, and her bone structure had changed, particularly in her face and hips. After several pages of notes, the enormity of the situation began to sink in. She set down her pen, took a shaky breath, and realized she needed to address some practical concerns. The first order of business was clothing. She couldn't go home in her men's clothes that no longer fit her new form. She rummaged through her bag and found an oversized sweater she sometimes wore during chilly lab hours. It was a temporary solution. With her heart still pounding, she gathered her belongings, pondering how to explain this to her colleagues, friends, and family. She decided to leave the lab quickly to avoid any unwanted questions, relieved to find that the halls were deserted at this late hour. After some fumbling with her keys, she managed to get into her car and drive home. The journey was filled with nervousness, worrying that someone might notice. Something was amiss, but she eventually made it back to her apartment without incident. Once inside, she sank into the couch, her mind swirling. She needed a plan. First, she figured she'd have to buy some women's clothing. After a couple of hours researching women's sizes and styles online, she placed an order for the basics: johns, ton shirts, underwear. Though she felt completely out of her depth, she climbed into bed, wondering if the strange events of the day had been a bizarre dream. But when morning came, there was no reversal of her condition. In fact, the changes appeared even more pronounced in the harsh light of day. She struggled through her normal routine. Brushing her teeth and showering felt awkward in her new body. Even walking felt strange with her altered center of gravity. As she stood in front of the mirror, the reality of her transformation continued to overwhelm her. Her clothing order arrived in the morning, and though she felt an urge to hide from the delivery person, the interaction was quick and uneventful. Inside, she hesitated before unpacking the clothes, feeling the soft fabrics in her hands. Putting on a bra proved especially difficult, but after several attempts, she managed to get dressed in the simple outfit of John's and a purple V-neck shirt. As she assessed her appearance in the mirror, she was struck by how natural she looked as a woman, though the realization was unsettling. Her next thought was that she couldn't continue using her old name, Alex. It would raise too many questions. So she needed a new identity to match her transformed appearance. After some contemplation, she settled on the name Alina, a fresh start to go along with her new form. She repeated the name softly, getting used to the sound of it. The next challenge was learning how to apply makeup. Alina had ordered some basic cosmetics, but she had no idea how to use them. Watching tutorials, she spent the next hour practicing, and though the results were far from perfect, at least she didn't look completely out of place. Soon, the necessity of leaving the apartment grew pressing. She needed groceries, and she had to return to the lab to continue her research. Despite the anxiety that came with going out in public, Alina gathered the courage to leave her apartment and head to the grocery store. She kept her head down, focusing on her shopping list, hyper-aware of her new body. But as she made her way through the aisles and interacted with the cashier, the experience slowly became more manageable. Once back home, she felt a small sense of pride. She had done it. She'd ventured out as a woman, and everything had gone smoothly. Now, however, she had to face the reality of returning to the lab. She spent the evening preparing explanations for her sudden disappearance and appearance. Deciding to present herself as a new research assistant, she arrived early the next morning at the biology building, nervous but ready. When she entered the lab, Alina greeted her colleagues, hoping none of them would notice anything amiss. However, when Dr. Lopez asked if she needed help, Alina nervously introduced herself. Dr. Lopez was skeptical at first, but after some back and forth, she accepted Alina as the new assistant. It was a temporary relief, but the truth of the situation was becoming more complicated by the day. Weeks passed as Alina focused on her research, determined to understand what had happened to her. But making slow progress, she adjusted to life as a woman, though there were still moments of awkwardness, especially when dealing with social interactions and personal history. She had to keep inventing details about her life to avoid suspicion. The isolation was challenging, but it felt necessary for now. One day in the lab, Alina found herself struggling to open a jar. Mark, a grad student, offered to help, and when he did, he invited her to join the group for drinks after work. Though hesitant, Alina accepted. The night at the bar was a revelation. She was able to relax and enjoy the company of her colleagues, forgetting about her unusual circumstances, even if just for a few hours. However, the next morning, Alina awoke with a hangover, reminding herself to be more careful with alcohol in her new body. Yet the social experience had helped her realize that maybe this new life didn't have to be all stress and isolation. Slowly, she began to feel more comfortable in her new skin. Although the challenge of returning to the lab and explaining everything to her colleagues was still looming, months passed. As Alina became more entrenched in her work, she gained respect in the lab, and her colleagues began to view her not as an odd newcomer, but as a valued member of the team. She had even made a few friends outside of work, easing some of the loneliness that had initially weighed on her. Then, one day, Alina found herself contemplating her wardrobe, and she realized that she had started to enjoy feminine clothing. It was an unsettling thought, but she shook it off as she prepared for a big. Presenting her research to the department heads, when her presentation concluded and her findings were met with applause, she felt a rush of accomplishment. Yet, the reflection in the window reminded her that the woman she had become still felt like a stranger. That evening, as she reviewed her research, Alina began to consider the larger implications of her discovery. What if she focused on controlling the transformation instead of reversing it? The potential applications for medicine and biology were staggering. It was a thrilling thought, but also terrifying. It meant that her transformation might not be reversible, and she would need to accept her new identity for good. The next morning, Alina walked into the lab with renewed determination. She presented her new research proposal to Dr. Lopez, carefully avoiding mentioning her personal connection to the transformation. Dr. Lopez listened thoughtfully, and after some discussion, agreed that the research had the potential to be revolutionary. Alina left the office with a sense of relief and excitement. She'd found her path forward, one that embraced both her passion for science and her new identity. As the days passed, Alina's research consumed her, but she found peace in the quiet moments, understanding that being in her new body was like exploring uncharted territory, full of challenges, but also full of potential. And for the first time in a long while, she felt at peace with who she was becoming. This is where the story ends. I spend hours of effort creating these kinds of stories, so if you're new to this channel, please hit the like button and subscribe my Sissygram Genderbender Stories YouTube channel. Also, don't forget to comment on what you would do if you were in his place. I'm eagerly waiting for your comments, and I personally read all of them. Okay, guys, thanks for joining. And I'll see you in the next story in the next video. Take care and bye.